High School Radio Company presents Murder Clinic, Tales of the World's Greatest Detectives. Tonight's radio broadcast is sponsored by Meridian Trojan Horses, the only Trojan horse you'll ever need.
Meridian Trojan Horses. Looking for a sure thing in your next battle with Troy? Want to sneak across the enemy's borders without him guessing a thing? Come on down to Meridian High School's woodshop, where we'll craft your own Trojan horse. From our basic pine horses that hold 4 soldiers to the deluxe model, made of Brazilian hardwood and holding an army of up to 50. You're sure to find a Trojan horse to fit your budget and your battle needs.
Good evening, Madam Story. You being our guest tonight is certainly a novelty. Murder is an unusual business for a woman.
Some people think so, Miss Knight, but you see, being a woman gives me one great advantage. My adversaries usually underestimate me.
Yes, I suppose they would. Now, what's the tale you're going to tell us tonight, Miss Story?
It's called The Scrap of Lace. I chose it because it seems to me so unusual a crime. A strange story of jealousy and death. I wonder if your listeners remember the great family of Kruger, who ruled New York society for generations. Our story involves Mrs. Peter John Kruger IV, Mimi as she was known to her friends, who inherited the crown of New York society upon the death of her mother-in-law, Mrs. Peter John Kruger III. She also inherited Teresa DuPont, that most formidable of social secretaries. I'll begin my tale on the morning of the murder, just as Mimi and Teresa were going over the day's calendar.
Oh, Teresa, must I go to that dull dinner at the Branson estate tonight? With my husband away on with his business in town, I simply can't cope. And that Mrs. Branson is such a bore. I think I'll call it off.
Mimi, no, you simply cannot.
Why ever not?
The dinner's being given for you. I was most insistent that I be consulted about the other guests. After all, my dear, you have certain responsibilities. Your dear departed mother-in-law, Mrs. Peter John Kruger III.
Yes, I know. She was a paragon of social virtues. She didn't mind being bored to death.
Mrs. Kruger, you must learn what it truly means to be the matron of this family. As Mrs. Peter Kruger IV, you have certain responsibilities.
Oh, Teresa, how you live in the past.
Not at all, madam. And you must admit, you need me to keep you informed of your duties.
You're not the only social secretary in New York. Why, your little assistant, Louise Mayfield, could take over very well.
Louise? Louise Mayfield? That child?
My dear Teresa, she's 21 and very competent. After all, you trained her.
Yes, and I am very fond of Louise. She's been like a daughter to me. But take my place? Why, surely you're joking, my dear.
Not at all. I like having her here.
Mr. Kruger seems to appreciate her skills, certainly.
Yes. My husband says she's a wonderful typist.
I'm sure she is. You know, Mimi, I'm a bit worried about Louise. She's been acting very odd lately. This party she's going to tonight, I have no idea where it is, or who her hostess is to be. I think perhaps she is meeting a man.
Well, good for her then. Whatever it is, she'll have a better time than I will. You know, Teresa, I shouldn't be surprised if Louise has been acting strangely because she's trying to keep away from my charming cousin, Jack Rowcliffe. I'm not sure that she's very grateful to you for arranging him off to Vera McPeak.
Jack Rowcliffe and Vera McPeak are a splendid match. He has family, position. Vera's young. She can be taught.
Oh, certainly yes. And her father has millions. But I don't blame Jack for straying from the fold. Louise is very lovely. And I find Vera so very common. I say, Louise should feel free to fall in love with Cousin Jack.
I'm not sure it is Jack that Louise has fallen for. Perhaps she's caught the eye of another gentleman in the household.
I don't like your tone at all, Teresa. Not at all. Perhaps Louise would be ready to take your place sooner than you may think.
She could never, never take my place.
Miss DuPont?
Oh, there's Louise, the darling. Louise, we're in the breakfast room. Come in here, my dear.
Good morning, Mrs. Kruger. Miss DuPont, did you want me this morning?
Oh, no, Louise, I did. Teresa insists I go to this dinner tonight. Jack and Vera are going with us, though my husband is still away on business. We'll be leaving around 7. Tell Jack, won't you?
Must I, Mrs. Kruger?
Mrs. Kruger has asked you to deliver a message. Do so, my dear.
Jack, I came only to tell you about the dinner.
Oh, Louise.
Please, must we go through all of this again? Why don't you leave me alone?
Because I'm mad about you, Louise. Can't you understand? I'm in love with you. I want you to marry me.
You? Mary? Jack Rowcliffe, the famous playboy. Don't be silly.
It does sound silly, doesn't it? But I'm changed, I tell you. You've changed me, Louise. I love you. There's nothing I wouldn't do for you.
And what about Vera McPeak? No, Jack. I'm afraid you've been bought, paid for, and delivered. Vera won't let you go so easily.
I'll tell her tonight that I'm through, Louise. I'll meet her at the dinner and tell her, and then I'll come back to you.
Come back if you like, Jack.
Good, I'll be back in a
But I
moment.
won't be here.
Where are you going, Louise? Well, why don't you tell me? Is it another man? It is, isn't it? It's another man. Who is it? Who is it?
This nonsense has gone far enough. What I do is my own business. Do you understand that, Jack?
No, it's my business. You're mine, Louise, you hear? You're mine. I'll have you where no one else will.
Jack, let go of my wrist.
Louise, tell me.
You're hurting me, please.
Louise, I
Let
want
me
to
go.
know. Well,
Well, Jack.
Vera.
Still making passes at the servants, I see?
Perhaps it's just as well you saw. Might as well have this out now.
Have what out, Jack? You think this girl is any concern of mine? It's pretty easy to see what Miss Mayfield's little game is. She'll think she'll marry into the great Kruger clan and strike it rich. Well, let me tell you, Miss Mayfield, Jack hasn't got a cent to his name and never will.
Vera, please.
I assure you, Miss McPeak, I have no ambitions in Mr. Rowcliffe's direction.
Quite the lady, aren't you, Miss Mayfield? Well, watch your step. Sure, I know what you all think of me, vulgar, common, but let me tell you, we Common Clay McPeaks from Pittsburgh know how to get what we want, and we know how to keep it. Think that over, Miss Mayfield. Think that over.
Yes? Come in.
Mademoiselle, Miss Louise, Madame Kruger has sent me to help you dress for your party.
Oh, Suzanne, how thoughtful. Have they all gone?
Maybe? The cars, they left long ago. And they go? But none of them were happy. Mais no, Madame, she want not to go. Monsieur Jacques, he say nothing. But Mademoiselle, his fiancée, the ugly one, she, how you say? She very angry.
Well, let's not think of them, Suzanne. I'm happy and I'm going to have a wonderful time.
Well, Mademoiselle is très charmante, very lovely. It is a treat you go to, n'est-ce pas? It is for your young man that your eyes shine so,
Maybe. You're too smart, Suzanne. How do I look?
Oh, ravishing, Mademoiselle. He will eat you up. You are so lovely.
Suzanne, you are a darling.
Yes, who is it? Oh, thank you, Jeeves. It is a letter for you, Mademoiselle.
A letter for me? It looks like there's something inside. Oh, how lovely. What an exquisite handkerchief. Why, who could have sent it to me?
Oh, Mrs. Kruger. She must have sent it. It's just like the set she bought with Mr. Kruger in Paris. It is perfect, Mademoiselle, for your ensemble, n'est-ce pas?
Oh, it's lovely.
Shall I put the scent, the perfume on it, Mademoiselle?
No, thank you. I'll do it myself, Suzanne. Oh, just put that bottle of gardenia perfume on my dressing table, please.
Oui, Mademoiselle.
Good night, Miss Suzanne, and thank you.
Bonsoir, Mademoiselle.
So lovely. One more drop. Susan! Susan! Help! Susan!
The body of Louise Mayfield was discovered later that evening, to the great horror of the entire Kruger household. By the next morning, Dr. Plummer had come and gone, and now the household begins to face the shocking events.
In all my years of experience, Mimi, I'd never had to cope with anything so sordid.
Teresa, how can you think of appearances with Louise, that beautiful child, laying in there dead?
But I must think of them. After all, Dr. Plummer refuses to sign a death certificate.
That old liar with his hints of foul play.
Maybe he's right, Vera. Maybe,
What do you mean, Jack? What do you know of Louise Mayfield's death?
well,
Stop arguing, you two. Dr. Plummer was kind enough to give us 36 hours. He's risking a great deal going as far as that. Oh, why doesn't Miss Story get here? Are you sure you acted wisely in calling her in, Mimi?
Well, it was either she or the police, and you said she had a reputation for discretion.
Come in. Yes?
Madame, it is the private detective, Miss Rose Story, and the assistant, Miss Tarley.
Thank heaven you're here, Miss Story. It was good of you to come so quickly. This unfortunate accident is likely to create a distressing scandal for Mrs. Kruger.
Accident, Miss DuPont. From what you told me over the phone, I gathered Louise Mayfield had been murdered.
Nonsense. We don't know that, Miss Story. Nobody does. We only know Louise is dead, poor child. We found her when we returned last night from our dinner party.
It isn't nonsense, Teresa, and you know it. Miss Story is perfectly right. It'd be very foolish to ask her help and not give her all the facts.
What facts, Mimi? Just because that old fossil of a Dr. Plummer won't give a death certificate. If you ask me, it's a nice little scheme of the doctor and this Story woman to split whatever cash they can manage to squeeze out of you.
Vera!
That's an interesting idea, Miss McPeak, though I must confess that so simple and clever a scheme would never have occurred to me. But surely Dr. Plummer offered some other reason for refusing a death certificate.
Yes. Oh, it's impossible. But he believes Louise inhaled some kind of poisonous gas.
Old fool, there isn't a gas outlet in the house.
How helpful of you to know that, Miss McPeak. You won't mind, will you, if I check for myself?
I don't mind what you do.
Oh, what's the use of all this? We've nothing to tell. All of us were at a dinner party 20 miles from here, together. When we got home after 11, we found Louise, well, that is, Miss Mayfield, dead.
I see. Miss DuPont, when you phoned me, you said something about some missing object.
Suzanne the maid insists a lace handkerchief came in the mail for Louise as she was dressing to leave. When we found her, the handkerchief had disappeared.
Very interesting. Suppose I start then by questioning this maid Suzanne. Maybe she can tell me more about this missing handkerchief. Good morning, Charlie. Typing last night's notes, I see.
Yes. Say, you look worried. What is it?
It's hard to be in this beautiful home, this mansion really, surrounded by such beauty, knowing there's a murderer in our midst.
So then you believe Louise Mayfield's death was not a natural one?
No doubt of it. Charlie, that poor girl was murdered.
Oh, how horrible. So young and so full of life.
And it's our job to find out who killed her. Have you finished typing those notes you took at the interviews last night?
Not quite. I'm almost finished.
Well then, I think I'll step out onto the terrace. Maybe the fresh air will help me think.
Something is bothering you.
Yes. What happened to that lace handkerchief Louise Mayfield received in the mail? I'm sure it must be important. Maybe even the murder weapon. But how? I must find it.
Ah, Miss Story out on the veranda for the views. You come out and shame the flowers and dim the sunlight.
Do you always make such pretty speeches even so early in the morning, Mr. Oakcliffe?
Ah, beautiful lady. You remember my name.
Yours would be a difficult name to forget, Mr. Oakcliffe,
Why's that?
thanks to the gossip columns in the papers.
Oh, that. Yes, I'm sure the gossip rags have plenty to say about me. I can't aspire to your circle. You're much too clever.
I should say that you were quite clever enough for your own purposes, Mr. Oakcliffe.
I'm just a lightweight.
I wonder. I see her standing out under her window. That is Miss Mayfield's room up there, isn't it?
Yes, that was her room.
Ivy-clad walls. Old English ivy. Sturdy and strong, too. I wonder, why are the vines so torn and broken?
Oh, are they? I hadn't noticed.
You loved Louisa Mayfield very much, didn't you?
Yes, I loved her more than anything in life.
And she?
Oh, why would she care for me? What am I? Poor, idle. Did you know? She was in love with someone else. I know it, I could tell. But if I'd known who it was, I'd... Never mind.
Why didn't you tell me, Mr. Oakcliffe, that you'd left your dinner party and come back here last night?
How did you know that I did?
I didn't. You've just told me.
Well, there, you see. I told you you're too clever for me.
What time was it when you got here?
Well, I don't know. It was about 9:30, I think.
I see. You came around back here in the garden. You saw a light in her window, called her, got no answer. Then you climbed the ivy up to her window, didn't you?
Well, Who saw me?
Nobody as far as I know. That broken ivy tells its own story. But not all of it. Tell me, what did you do when you got up there?
Suppose you're thinking that I killed her. I wouldn't blame you if you did. And I don't care much if you do. I've got nothing more.
Please, Mr. Oakcliffe.
I'm sorry. Well, I went in and found her lying there on the floor, dead. Then, like the coward I am, I got scared. How could I explain my being there? So I climbed down again the way I went up and drove back to Quaker Ridge. Suppose you don't believe me?
Suppose I say I would reserve judgment. Now, will you give me the handkerchief that you took from Louise Mayfield's hand?
How did you know that?
It's obvious. I suppose that you took it as a remembrance of her.
Yes, I did. It was the last thing she touched. Here it is.
Thank you.
Miss Story, could you come into the office a moment?
We'll continue this talk later, Mr. Oakcliffe. Will you excuse me now, please?
Certainly.
Later that day, Rose and her assistant Charlie receive an anonymous letter which leads to a mysterious visitor.
So this letter was pushed under the door. Did you open it, Charlie?
No, I saw it was addressed to Louise Mayfield, and so I called you.
I see. It's postmarked Briarcliff. Here's a notation on the envelope, in pencil. A very literate correspondent. If you want to buy any more info about this letter, we can make a deal. I'll drop around 11. Well, Charlie, we haven't long to wait. Now let's read the letter. Darling, I can hardly wait till Tuesday night when I'll see you again. I'm moving heaven and earth to arrange things so we'll be together for always. All my love, dear. It's signed J.
Jay? That must be Jack Rowcliffe.
In the light of what we know of their relationship, does it sound like Jack Rowcliffe?
No, that's stupid of me. But the initial?
It could be that J stands for John. Peter John Kruger.
Mimi's husband? But he's in the city on business. And you don't think that he and that girl...
We must consider the possibility. She was planning to be away for most of the evening. There would be plenty of time to take the train and meet Mr. Kruger at a hotel in town. Ah, this must be our mysterious correspondent now. Come in.
Well, lady, here I am, Johnny on the spot. Like I says, do we do business?
You're the Kruger chauffeur, aren't you, Mr.
Gargan's the name, chauffeur and bodyguard.
I'm sure you're efficient in both departments, Mr. Gargan. But why the bodyguard?
Well, it's like this. The Krugers are important people, see? They're likely to be bothered by cranks and other undesirable citizens. Get it? They need protection, and I'm the guy that can protect them.
Yes, I can see that, Gargan. But now, about this letter.
Yeah, that's right. Well, do I sing or don't I?
That depends on your song, Gargan. First tell me, how did you manage to get hold of this letter?
Well, it's like this. I always get the mail, see, and I deliver it. But yesterday, Mrs. Kruger and the old dame are with me. So I gets the mail and I look through it to see if there's anything for me. And I sees this letter. When I come out to the car, Mrs. Kruger says, "Give me the mail." So I hands it to her. When I get it back, this letter ain't with the others. Well, I don't think about it till last night when this Mayfield dame is bumped off. Then I began to smell a rat. And this morning I did a little mooching around, and here's the letter.
Very graphic, Gargan. Now what further information have you to give us?
I can tell you who sent that letter to the Mayfield dame.
So, for how much?
Half a G.
$500. That's an expensive song, Gargan.
Aw, nuts. You could put it on the expense account.
You're right. Nuts it is. The $500 is yours.
Thanks.
Here you are. Now, who sent this letter to Louisa Mayfield?
Well, it was...
No! Gargan!
Miss Story, is he dead?
Yes. The shot came through that window.
But why?
To keep him from telling us who sent that letter to Louise. Help me put him in the closet over there.
Rose, I won't let you. You can't. You've got to report it.
If I report it now, the police would interfere with all my plans. I need 24 hours.
You're risking your reputation.
We've taken risks before.
But this is concealing a murder. Why do you need 24 hours?
To learn the secret of this, Charlie.
Why? Why, that's one of Mrs. Kruger's handkerchiefs.
No, Charlie, it's the handkerchief. The one Rockcliffe found on Louise Mayfield's body. I'm staking my reputation on this little scrap of lace.
Miss Story, Dr. Potter is back with the laboratory report.
Just as I thought. Oh, what a horrible use of such a lovely thing. This handkerchief was the murder weapon.
But how could it have been?
Because our murderer knew that Louise Mayfield used gardenia perfume.
But can we find out who sent it?
I rather think we can. Charlie, get those 4 lace handkerchiefs that Suzanne got for me from Mrs. Kruger. They are a perfect match to the murder weapon.
So now what are you going to do?
Now, my dear assistant, I'm going to present a noose to a murderer.
Was Louise Mayfield murdered by Mimi Kruger, who suspects Louise of an affair with Mr. Kruger? Or was it Jack Rockcliffe, the jealous lover? Perhaps Teresa DuPont, who was afraid of losing her position? Or could the killer be Vera McPeak, Louise's rival for Jack's affections? Miss Story now visits each of her 4 suspects in turn.
Mrs. Kruger, it's the handkerchief. It's the one that was sent to Louise Mayfield.
But it looks just like mine. Where did you get it?
I can't tell you that now, but I'm afraid it was the cause of her death.
Oh, how horrible.
What I'm going to ask you to do is to hold it for me, just until tomorrow morning. Mr. Rockcliffe, I wanted to return this handkerchief to you for safekeeping. I'll want it back tomorrow morning. I don't know how at present, but I feel this handkerchief will be the means of proving who killed Louise Mayfield, so guard it carefully.
I'll do that. You can depend on me, Miss Story.
Thank you, Mr. Rockcliffe. But Miss DuPont, you can help.
What's the real situation, Miss Story?
Oh, I wish I knew. I suspect, but I have no proof. I can go no further without the assistance from the chemists.
Whom do you suspect?
Perhaps you suspect as well.
I'm afraid I do.
Well, what I want you to do is to keep this for me, until tomorrow morning. Miss McPeak, the greatest proof that I'm not against you is that I'm going to ask you to keep this handkerchief for me, the most important piece of evidence I have. I have no assurance the murderer will not kill me to get it back, but it would never be supposed that I'd given it to you to guard. Will you keep it for me until tomorrow morning?
I don't know why I have to be involved in this mess, but I guess I can hold it for you.
Thank you, Miss McPeak.
The next morning, the chemist report is in. Detective Rose Story gathers her 4 suspects together to reveal her findings.
Mrs. Kruger, I have asked you, Miss DuPont, Miss McPeak, and Mr. Rockcliffe to meet me here this morning in order that we may determine who murdered Louise Mayfield.
Serious. You know, Miss Story? You know who killed her?
I believe I do, Mrs. Kruger, but I hope to prove it. I know that lace handkerchief sent to her through the mail was the murder weapon. Perhaps that can tell us something. May I have the handkerchief, please?
It's
Why,
right here.
certainly. Why, I thought.
I don't
I
understand.
say, what is this?
So, a trick.
That's right, Miss McPeak. A trick. One only a guilty person need fear.
Guilty?
But really, Miss Story, I don't understand.
Yes, Miss Story.
Please take the handkerchiefs one at a time. Mark each in pencil with the initials of the person from whom you receive it.
May I have the handkerchiefs, please?
Yes, here's mine.
One at a time, please.
Well, all right.
Now, Charlie, spread them out on your desk with the initials turned face down. As you probably surmise, none of you had the original handkerchief. That has never left my possession. Here it is.
But I don't understand.
This handkerchief in my hand is saturated with a deadly poison that, when mixed with alcohol, releases a lethal gas which is almost instantly fatal. May I remind you that a perfume is 90% alcohol, and a young girl about to go out on a romantic tryst would inevitably spray her hanky with her favorite perfume.
How horrible.
Yes, Miss DuPont, I agree with you.
But surely you don't suspect any of us.
Why not, Miss McPeak? I found that a murderer is usually motivated by fear. Fear of what the victim might do to them. All of you faced that fear as far as Louise Mayfield was concerned. But one of you feared so deeply that you dared risk murder to protect what you had. That one person alone knew what the fatal handkerchief contained. I gave each one of you what you thought was that handkerchief. I was curious to see what disposition you would make of the evidence. Charlie,
Yes?
please examine those 4 handkerchiefs carefully. And when you've done that, tell me if any of them are changed since they left our hands last evening.
Yes. This one has been washed.
Washed? Well, I don't
Read the initials on it.
TD. Teresa DuPont.
Teresa? Teresa?
Yes, me, Teresa. Old, useless Teresa, living in the past, Teresa.
No, it's too horrible.
Why, you murderer.
Get away from me! Get away from me, I say! Get away from me, I'll shoot!
Jack, she has a gun.
She's shot herself.
Oh, it's all my fault. I threatened to send her away. She knew her time was over. She couldn't stand it. She just couldn't stand it. All Teresa wanted was for things to be the way they were before.
No, Mrs. Kruger, it wasn't your fault. It was better so. It was the end of a passing era, and the end of a life that was over long ago.
You have been listening to the Meridian Radio Company in The Scrap of Lace. Tonight's players were Jenica Ross, Shannon Fromley, Fran Manukin, Brooke Hinkleman, Eli Nichols, Emily Orbach, Natalie Larson, Annalise Ross, Shantae Reimer, and Emma Hill. Sound effects by Sarah Brown. Original music score written and produced by Eli Nichols. Directed by Tara Rohrbach and Nicole Pritchek. Sound production and editing by Mark Hinkleman. From our family to yours, good luck and good night.